Hello, hello to another edition of Better the Devil You Know. We're back after a short break, and wow, big news emerged last night that Erik Ten Hag is staying as the Manchester United manager. Now, for those of you who've watched my previous videos, hi mum, then you will have known we argued here that Erik Ten Hag should sadly, we did say sadly, leave his job after what was a pretty dismal season. So, Ineos clearly disagree. I actually think they probably have reached the right decision. So perhaps I've also done a bit of a U-turn too. Let's have a look at what's going on together. So as we've discussed, Erik Ten Hag is staying as Manchester United manager. We were led to believe this would not be the case. There was strong indications really kind of throughout the last quarter of the season that United were in conversations with other managers. Obviously the performances and the results weren't amazing. Think of that Coventry 3-3, the Crystal Palace 4-0 defeat. And there was a story that broke out on The Guardian on the Friday night that Erik Ten Hag would be sacked regardless of the FA Cup result. However, that clearly hasn't been the case. United, 8-1 underdogs, managed to defeat Manchester City 2-1 in the FA Cup final. And perhaps partly as a result of that, Erik Ten Hag has kept his job. However, I do think there are other reasons why he is still in charge, and we'll go talk about those now. So the first key issue is actually around the replacements. Is there a manager out there that Ineos believed would be better than Erik Ten Hag? They clearly had conversations with a number of managers. I think that's sensible. I think that's what you would expect. Erik Ten Hag was not the manager that Ineos appointed. Therefore, in essence, he was also kind of on trial for his job for the last part of the season. And so Ineos spoke with Thomas Tuchel, they spoke with Mauricio Pochettino, it sounds like perhaps also Kieran McKenna, Thomas Frank, maybe Gareth Southgate. God, that would be an awful conversation to have, speaking to Gareth Southgate. But in the end, they decided clearly that none of these candidates, none of these managers would be better than what they had currently. And I think with Tuchel, I think that's clearly not necessarily fit. He doesn't necessarily fit the vision that Ineos have of a kind of a more kind of a head coach structure. I also think Tuchel doesn't seem to be a builder. He doesn't seem to last very long at clubs. Mauricio Pochettino, I think, also prefers the more kind of traditional management style. I think he would have been a good fit actually under kind of Richard Arnold and John Murtaugh's kind of vision, but clearly Ineos want to go a different way. And then Thomas Frank, Kieran McKenna, unproven, inexperienced, certainly at the highest level. I think Kieran McKenna is an exciting manager, and we discussed whether his options on this channel too, and perhaps why staying at Ipswich or going to Brighton would be the right move for him. So I'm pleased that he has done that, and that kind of does limit the options somewhat. So I think when you're evaluating whether to get rid of a manager, you also have to think about, well, who's going to come in to replace him, and there is no point in getting rid of a manager if the replacement is not going to be as good. And I think it's clear when you look at the other clubs who have hired managers this season that they've really struggled. Bayern Munich, a case in point. Their manager saga went on for months and months, and in the end they settled with Vincent Kompany, which is a huge gamble, to put it politely. And Liverpool also looked at similar managers. Chelsea also looked at kind of similar managers, and so I don't feel like there was a very strong pool of candidates out there, and I think that's had a huge impact on this final decision as to whether Erik Ten Hag should stay or should go. I think another huge element here is the level of risk. In essence, United had to weigh what is the bigger risk, keeping Erik Ten Hag on or bringing in a new, inexperienced or slightly less than perfect manager based on the kind of the candidate profile that we have. And it's clear that there wasn't one out there that was of the sufficient profile that they wanted. And in some ways, and I agree with this, it's a lower risk to keep Ten Hag. The dressing room is settled. He has brought in some players. He's familiar with the players, the strengths and their weaknesses. There is a relationship there already. You're not just mixing up with another manager, with new coaches, with another approach. And I think that is a lower risk. And Ineos could look at this as an extended trial period. Yes, they're going to give Erik Ten Hag probably a new contract. I think they really have to now. They're showing that they're backing him. He needs to be backed by this new management with a new contract. But within that new contract, I would expect them to kind of clarify what it is that they expect from a manager or head coach or whatever they want to call it, what that role is moving forward. And then they can also set their own kind of parameters as to what success or failure looks like and the consequences of not reaching those targets and that failure. And it could be that how Ineos view it is slightly different to the kind of the old regime. And they may have within their contract kind of areas of the requirements that Ten Hag has to reach in order for him to still be kind of seen as suitable, as right for the job. And on top of that, I also think this gives Ineos time. I think Ineos need time. Although the takeover, yes, some people are talking about, it happened, it was announced in kind of December the 25th. They've not had the requisite time to kind of set up the structure, bring in the right people, and let the people kind of start to deliver on the strategy and the vision that's being set out. I don't think that vision is fully fleshed out yet. I think it's still quite outlined. It's still quite vacuous. And until the right people are in, I think Ineos need time. These things do take time. And with Dan Ashworth still kind of potentially in arbitration, we're not quite sure what's happening there. Omar Barada doesn't even start until next month. They will likely also want to bring in people too. The structure and the way of working isn't set up yet. So you kind of buy yourself a little bit of time by keeping Erik Ten Hag, and whilst you can kind of get up to the engine room of the club, if you will, kind of gets up to speed, and then they would be in a much better place the following season, the end of the season, to make an informed decision, providing things don't get so bad that they have to kind of make a major decision prior to then. Now, I think there's a lot of people, understandably, who are concerned by this decision, partly because Ten Hag season was really, really bad, certainly in the league. An 8th place finish, the lowest finish since 1990. United finished on minus goal difference. And the consistent levels of fast that we saw from the team is what I kind of felt meant that it was kind of untenable for him. But I do think this one, out of all the manager kind of shouldn't we change, I think Ten Hag has kind of stood out, as it's not been very easy to make that decision. And it's clear that the FA Cup, the fact that we won that game, did have an impact, I think, on the eventual decision. And the reason I'd say that is because although it is just one game, you don't want to make a decision based on the back of one game. Actually, the FA Cup in totality was a huge success. Yes, okay, the commentary game aside, but beating Liverpool, beating Manchester City when you were such underdogs, and the way that United did it as well, I think. And what that unlocked was European football for Manchester United too. It was a huge result for Ten Hag, and it was a really significant moment, I think, in the season, and has given the fans something to cheer about in what was otherwise a really, really farcical season, in my opinion, certainly when you look at the Champions League and some of the performances that you saw in the Premier League. But I do think if this is a sign that Ineos have bowed to fan pressure, or the kind of the sentiment that Ten Hag should stay off the back of the FA Cup, then that is concerning. And it is also concerning if they have done a U-turn based really on the kind of on one result, when really in totality there was a lot of issues in that second season, which we discussed in our first video. So I actually don't think that is right. I think Ineos, they don't strike me as the type to really. They do care about fan sentiment, but I don't think they would really massively factor that into their decision making. And I think the other reasons that I've given as to why they have stuck with Ten Hag is probably more in line with how they have been thinking. So it is a huge moment, obviously, but I also don't feel like. I feel like it's the pragmatic choice for Ineos, especially in this time. And who knows? The manager market may be significantly different in 12 to 24 months. You could, for example, see people like Ancelotti on the market, Pep Guardiola on the market, although I think that would be quite optimistic to see Guardiola move from City to United. But the point is that right now, it's not a very good manager market. And right now, the people, the kind of Ineos people have not had necessarily had the chance to really properly evaluate who are the upcoming managers who may fit at the style and the structure that they want. So this next 6 to 12 months buys them that time, and they can make a lot more kind of informed decisions. And hopefully Ten Hag doesn't have to face the kind of the injury crisis that he did this season, that the that they are able to recruit in the key positions. Certainly kind of central defence is one, striker is one, and kind of the engine room is the third kind of key areas, and I guess left back too. So most of the team basically. But if they are able to do that, then you really are able to kind of make a very informed decision on Ten Hag, given the fact that this would be his third season, and issues around kind of time really don't apply to a manager who's had that kind of that length of opportunity. So I do think this is the pragmatic choice, and in the end I completely understand it. I don't think United should have sacked Ten Hag if they didn't think that there was a better replacement out there, and ultimately I think that is why he's still in a job. So let me know how you think about it. Ten Hag, should he stay, should he go? It's going to be an exciting, interesting season ahead. Let's hope that United can bring in the right players and also get out the players that are no longer required. Those really are kind of two sides of the same coin, especially given how tight PSR may be for United. And I will see you, well, I don't know. I'll see you soon.